This is not a flex, but like it is actually a flex because it's something I'm really proud of. I'm hosting a 100-person event. That's a lot. That's a lot. When I look at the past year, I have consistently challenged myself without doing anything that I knew I couldn't ultimately manage. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to highlight one of the core values of Fame Ready: expansion. Because building a profitable business isn't just about creating something great. It's about differentiation and standing out. And if you run a retail shop, you know just how hard that can be. Your brand, whether it's a personal brand, a product, or a storefront, is shaped by what people associate with you. And for retailers, that includes what's on your shelves. Finding unique products your customers won't see in big box stores takes time. Sourcing can be exhausting. And tying up your cash flow in new inventory, that's risky. That's why I'm so excited to partner with Faire. Faire is the largest online wholesale marketplace connecting hundreds of thousands of brands and retailers around the world. It makes discovering unique products simple and testing new inventory far less stressful. Retailers get net 60 payment terms, which means you can sell your inventory before you even have to pay for it. And they offer free returns on first orders, so you can try new brands with confidence. And if you're a brand listening, Faire also helps your products get discovered by retailers globally without endless cold pitching, because you know we hate a cold pitch on this show. If growing your shop, differentiating your inventory, and strengthening your brand reputation is part of your next level strategy, I highly recommend checking out Faire. If you're a retailer and you haven't placed an order through Faire before, you can find the link in the show notes and use code Katrina10 for 10% off your first order. Now, let's get into today's episode. All right, you guys, welcome back to Fame Ready, the podcast to show you that anything is possible. Oh my goodness. Anything is possible because the way I have been working this week, the things are happening. And so I'm coming back to you with another tactical episode. So buckle in and buckle up. But you know what's really interesting? Tactics are just such a small part of someone's success. I really, really believe that. But what I want to talk to you about today is how to sell out your event. And you know what? In a perfect world, I would have been opening this podcast episode with like, Big Brand Energy Live is sold out. I mean, it possibly could be by the time this episode goes live next week. So like, let's not exclude that from the realm of possibility. But at the time of this recording, it is not yet sold out, but we're close. We're sitting at about 12 tickets left, which, you guys, it's killing me. It's really killing me. But I'm also really at peace with the women that are already in the room. And so that's what I wanted to chat through with you guys today, because a lot of my clients go on to host their own events. I think that's like a natural progression of a personal brand, honestly, because to me, if you have a really strong personal brand, if people are engaged with you, if they want to buy from you, if they want to spend time with you, like that really demonstrates to brand partners, event organizers, like any of those like really big glamorous opportunities you're seeking out. If you can host an in-person event, that shows that you can actually like move people into action, because hosting an event means that people are investing their time, their money, and their energy in you. Okay. And that's a lot to ask of people, especially when they're so busy, especially when there are so many different things that they could spend their money on. So when I look at personal brands hosting events, I'm like, well, that's an act of bravery, because it's really going to tell you and show you just how invested your audience is with you, which is kind of crazy. It's kind of a crazy project to take on if you've never done it before. So I end up coaching a lot of my clients through like their very first personal brand based event. And one of the women inside Fame Ready VIP, which is the high proximity tier in the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program, she messaged me this week because she has an event that she's hosting in the fall, and she was starting to let the mind chatter get to her. So she had messaged me saying like, help me out with the mindset stuff. Help me kind of navigate this new this new level of discomfort where, I'm hosting this event, I've put myself out there, ticket sales, sponsorships right now feel slow. Help me, give me some advice to help me kind of move through this new challenge. And I always have so many things to say when it comes to events because I do believe that a lot of the time people bite off more than they can chew. So I say this with love. I am not a perfect person, okay? But if there's one thing that I am good at, it's not taking such a big risk that it destabilizes me. I'm definitely a risk taker, okay? The business loans of it all, the making substantial financial investments into my business, my honestly willingness to spend money in my business right now. I made a significant investment last week. I think it was the biggest chunk of money I ever put on a credit card all in one go. Um, but it felt right. But I would have never been able to do that. And as I'm talking, I'm literally holding on to a dog bone right now. If you're watching on YouTube, that's what's in my hand. Dexter and I are also playing this morning. But I think what makes me really good at what I do is I'm never going to take a risk that like destabilizes me entirely. And I see people do this with events all the time. They go straight to the 100-person event with a higher ticket price point, lots of bells and whistles when they don't even know if they can actually fill that room or cover their costs. So I want to tell you all the kind of like ins and outs of like how to sell out your event because I mean, I've had two events now that have both sold out and we are banging on the door of a sellout event for Big Brand Energy Live. I am in like the peak, last minute ticket period coming up on those kind of like last 2 weeks before ticket sales end is when people like finally like shit or get off the pot. Ew. That's like not I should not use that line. It just is not a pleasant visualization. But yeah, so before we get into that though, like let's just and I've talked about this on previous episodes, but it just like keeps coming up. So I really encourage each and every person that I work with, person that's hosting an event, whatever it is, even if it's a workshop, start small. The very first event I ever hosted by myself was a 30-person podcast launch party called a Launch and Learn, and it was when this podcast was actually under the name KO Your Brand. So it was the very first iteration of my podcast I ever launched, and I wanted to do a launch party, and that was going to be my first foray into seeing if I could host events, seeing how engaged my audience really, really was. And I have to be so honest, when I launched ticket sales for that event, I only had like let me back it up for a sec because I like really thought I prepared. Okay. So like I had done like a save the date post on Instagram a few weeks before that, was starting to do some like promo. I built a wait list of like 60 people. Okay. So I was like 60 people. I only have 30 spots, hosting it in like this like smaller studio. So there really wasn't an opportunity to like add more seats. So when that wait list was growing, I really felt confident that this thing was gonna sell out. What I learned, because once I finally launched the event to that list and only one ticket sold in the first 48 hours, I was like, oh, this is gonna be harder than I thought. And you know what's interesting? Then when I went through my second event, which was in October, I doubled everything. So I doubled the attendance. So instead of 30 people, I'm like, okay, now let me do an event for 60 people. Uh, budget wise, instead of like a $2,500 budget, let me do a $10,000 budget. And now, just over a year later from that March 2025 event, um, I'm hosting a 100-person event, triple what I did back then, more than triple the number of attendees. And The budget is about $25,000. So that's a lot. That's a lot. What's that? 10xing the budget. But you know what's really beautiful about reflecting on that trajectory? It's just like, yeah, when I look at the past year, I have consistently challenged myself without doing anything that like I knew I couldn't ultimately manage. And I think that's the biggest thing because it's really important to understand like the level of risk you take on when you're running an event. Right now, I've got an email sitting in my inbox that I have to answer that's about event insurance. I am playing with the idea, obviously, like as an event host, you get like liability insurance and all of that if something was to happen at your event. The thing that I like am mulling on, and I know people have all different perspective on insurance and whether or not you need it for different things. I'm a big insurance girl. I don't know. I just love peace of mind. And so the one thing that I was thinking about investing in for this event is um, event cancellation insurance. Now, I say that event cancellation insurance post COVID covers a very, very slim um very slim selection of incidents. So all of the really big things that haunt me at night, like a pandemic or war or any of those, like those are not covered under event cancellation insurance. But instead it would be something like if the venue flooded a couple days before the event, how would you recoup those costs? So that is kind of something that I'm looking at in terms of protection because at this point, this event has generated so much revenue, like it's a profitable event. So if I don't put proper protections in place, I'm putting myself and my business in a precarious situation, right? So that's the other important thing to talk about. Like, as soon as you decide to run a large scale event, you're now effectively running another business. And that means treating it with the same level of, seriousness, detail, really putting all of the pieces in place to make sure that you are protected. The thing that event cancellation insurance doesn't protect against is if you have low attendance numbers and if you can't sell out the event to cover the cost. And I think that's even more validating that you as a business owner or personal brand, when you decide to take on a project like this, that you really go all in. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what all in actually looks like. Anytime a client decides to launch an event, I say to them, you have now given yourself a new project until this event is over. You now have a new business until this event is over. And that means you've got to be willing to give it as much attention, commitment, promotion as you would your original business. I would say right now I'm in the thick of it. I spend more time doing event related stuff as opposed to like coaching and consulting in these next couple weeks, which shouldn't really shock anyone. I mean, at this point, it's all like making sure we've got the pieces in place. But that's the other thing. I think, for people who take on a large scale event too early in their entrepreneurial journey, if you don't have clarity around what you do as a personal brand, what your function is, what you want to be known for, that makes that event incredibly hard to sell. For me, it's part of my ecosystem. So at this point, I have like a couple discovery calls or consultations with some corporate clients over the next couple weeks. Those would be like one-on-one clients, but anyone else who is interested in working with me in any capacity, maybe joining the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program or anything like that, I funnel them into the event first because I'm like, hey, why don't you come to the event, experience what it's like to be in a space that I create. You can see how I talk about this work. You can see some of the expectations that I set on clients. You'll be able to meet some of my clients. And so it becomes part of the funnel itself. So if you're a personal brand running an event, you must make sure that it is in line with everything else you want to promote. Like, it doesn't have to be like such a structured funnel, but everything should relate. And I'll give you some behind the scenes because My marketing director just started this week, and I already feel so excited. So, her task this week is to do some media pitching leading up to the event, see if we can score like a last minute media placement, um, just to generate some extra hype and excitement, the things that I just simply do not have time to do anymore. So she's going to be working on doing all of that pitching. But what's really great about having a personal brand that is so ingrained into the event itself is, whether we land on TV or in the newspaper or wherever it is, that placement is not only just like event promotion, it's also lifestyle. It's also like connected to my personal brand and helps position me even more as an expert thought leader, um, icon in my field. So I say this because I'm also working on another placement with a publication. And I'm not sure when that article is going to come out. So we've kind of given like two different angles where it's like, okay, um, you know, let's still talk about the event, but the event cannot be like the main point of the article, because if that article comes out too late, then kind of a waste. But by having your personal brand and the event that you run so intertwined and reflective of each other, that's when you can really, um, like use all of these PR placements as assets to grow your business, regardless of what you're actually doing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what it actually looks like to sell out this event. I know I keep saying this and going off track, but clearly I've got a lot of thoughts on the topic because I'm in it right now. So, obviously, if you are running an event, I had mentioned like that becomes your new job. Like you've given yourself a new job as event promoter slash coordinator. And I always say to myself, because so I'm just like not like a hard and fast sales girl. Okay. So I have my own sales process, which I love. I think business coaches or sales coaches out there probably would tell me there's aspects of it that are wrong. I'm a highly relational human. I've stopped trying to like fit into the aggressive sales tactics that the internet loves to push on us, because what works for me obviously doesn't work for everybody, but it's my style and it feels right. So for me, I think to myself, when I'm in like a season of promoting an event, in my brain, I'm like, every single day, I should have quote unquote sold the event at least once. So, what does that mean? So, to me, that's doing a post on social media. Maybe it's an actual feed post, or maybe it's just on Instagram stories. Maybe, and not even doing that, maybe it's going to an event and meeting people in person and mentioning my event. I always carry around like a little promotional postcard to give to people if they're interested. Um, it could also be like if I'm on like a one-on-one consultation with someone, it could be me mentioning it there on that call. Or maybe it's just like talking to a friend about it and asking them to like help circulate it with their audience. So every day I try to tell myself, oh, here's another one. It could be like email marketing, sending an email to your list, like promoting it. So every day you want to ask yourself, did I do something today to support the sales of the event? Doesn't always have to be like what we think it is, like a true marketing tactic. It could be as simple as talking about it, telling someone about it, sending someone a message. And to me, that just keeps you like in the flow of sales, anyways. So, first and foremost, that's it. Like, this event should be top of mind for you and everything that you do until it is over. So, that's the first thing. Always making sure you're like integrating a touch point where you've like made a concerted effort to like sell that event each and every day. The second thing that I think people rely on too much are speakers to sell tickets. When I look at my speaker lineup for this event, I do have to shout out Christine Bano, who was the co-facilitator of my VIP day. She did a great job of sharing that with her mastermind, with her community. When I look at my event in June, I would say there's probably a couple people who opted to come based on the speaker lineup or because someone invited them to come, but certainly not a high volume. And to be honest, I think it takes a really specific kind of person to be able to draw people to an event. So, or like to an event that they're such a small part of. So, a great example. So I actually do this really well. This is not a flex, but like it is actually a flex because something I'm really proud of. So when I was at Power Table Live, I had like 7 or 8, can't remember, 7 or 8 clients, community members, people that love me and I love them come to that event. Okay. That was pretty incredible and pretty effortless. It's not like I was sending messages to those women saying, you've got to come. Like, I shared it within my community. I shared it on social media. I really just shared and celebrated that event. Bing, bang, boom. I'm an incredible referral partner. I did this for an event that I was speaking at in February as well in Wisconsin. I had a handful, let me just count because I feel like it was 5. Yeah. So I had 5 people come to that event. And that was, I think maybe I sent one person a message suggesting they come. But apart from that, again, that that space, had me cheerleading it. And when I put my name on something or when I'm on someone else's stage, I become a draw. But and let's just get this out of the way now because in October I'm also speaking at an event on the other side of the country and I've already got women that are coming. One of them inquired about being a sponsor of that event. It's a whole thing. So this is all to say, if you put me on your stage, I'm going to help with some ticket sales. But that's pretty unique. Okay. Most event organizers I speak to do not feel like their speakers draw attendance. And I would agree. I've kind of experienced that in my own like event planning journey. I think it's challenging, right? Because when you're a speaker at an event, you're really not responsible for how that event unfolds. You don't really know. Getting your community members involved in going to an event when all of the elements are out of your control, like what if they have a bad time? Challenging, right? So that's just the one thing that I caution people with. I think people put far too much reliance on their speakers to sell tickets, and not even from a like expectation way, but just when they plan the event, they think, oh, if I have this speaker in my lineup, she's going to be a draw. If I have this person, they'll help incentivize ticket sales. The success of the event really does rest with you. You could have like some of the biggest name speakers at your event, and I still don't believe that that's enough to move people. For example, there's an event that happens not that far from me, very, very high ticket price point, and like some really big name speakers. But even for me, like that's not enough to get me to pay that high ticket price. For me, when I go to an event, like I'm really looking for the networking opportunities, the relationship building opportunities. Like that's what's important to me. So I think we forget that. We think if we just engage people that have like larger followings, professional speakers, all of that, then that's going to solve a ticket sale problem. And most often it won't. So the third thing that I think people forget is regardless if you're running an event where people fly into, you have a hotel room block, all of that, there is going to be a significant amount of people that attend locally. So if you don't have a local community, if you are not tied in to your local community, if you don't have great brand awareness in your local community, you're missing out on an incredible opportunity to build it and sell out the event, because a portion of your ticket sales are going to come from people that are in driving distance of that thing. So This is actually something that people have always asked me questions about back when, a couple of years ago when I was building my personal brand in the early days. I would talk about building an international personal brand. And I would say local brand awareness is still an incredibly important part of building like a global international personal brand. And the reason behind that is if you don't have like an existing like community that recognizes you as a thought leader, expert, if your local community doesn't see you that way, how can you expect people around the world to see you that way? And this is where I want to be super clear on what I mean by international personal brand, because people think that like global personal brand, international personal brand means that like you sell like have clients in different countries. And to me, well, that's a stepping stone. Doesn't really define international personal brand for me. International personal brand means that you are going to speak in different countries, you have audience in different countries, you can move people in different ways. Like simply having a business that serves people around the world is kind of like standard in my opinion. So that's why I think people misjudge the importance of local brand awareness, because how are you going to build up that initial authority and credibility if you can't get your local community on board with seeing you that way? How do you expect to do that on like a global scale? So I say that because a lot of times I find like people scoff at going to local events. They feel like they're too small, blah, 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 all those like limiting beliefs that people love to just share. I'm a big fan of Chamber of Commerce events. I'm actually going to one later today. I have a great feeling that I'm going to meet people who are excited about coming to my event. I'm going to go with my postcards. I'm going to hand them out to anyone that I talk to. And that really is my play for the next couple weeks. The next couple weeks, as I really try to sell out this event, I am like getting in as many local rooms as possible. I don't want to get on another plane for a couple months. Like the last couple months of travel kind of took me out, but I do have a stacked event schedule because I know in this like last crucial week of selling out these remaining tickets, the way people are going to buy these from me is if they meet me in a room, like me, engage with me. And the other important part about that is when you go to events with the intention of hoping some of those people might come to your event, like you're in a space where people already make that purchasing decision. So if you're someone who is going to events, you're in rooms with other people who like to go to events. So that is really like the best case scenario, the easiest way to bring people over into your audience. So you've kind of got to make that investment first. And I think that's what people forget. They think like, oh, okay, I don't need to go to any events, but all these people are going to come to mine. And I'm like, bitch, why would you expect that? If you aren't putting yourself in rooms with, new people you haven't met before, if you're not physically in spaces, being seen, growing your brand awareness that way, why would you expect that people are going to come to your event? And I think like that's also a really, really important thing. When you're building out an event and selling it, there are so many angles you have to pull out to be able to storytell why that's an important space for someone to get into. So for Big Brand Energy, this is like an ongoing project, right? It's like, okay, what's the storyline this week? I actually came up with one that I actually really love because it's the history of Big Brand Energy. So Big Brand Energy is a phrase that I used to use when I was really trying to sell PR services to small businesses. I was like, if you use PR in your business, that's big brand energy. You're treating yourself like a big business. You're going to become one so much faster. And so that's what I like originally used the concept for. And now it's turned into so much more. And I did a post kind of explaining that history and what that really means. And that's just like all these different talking points engage people in different ways. So you're not just like talking about all of the speakers every single time. Because I think a lot of the time people try to sell tickets based on like who else is in the room, who's speaking. And I think that can be effective up to a certain point. If people aren't moved by that, then I think it's important to know that and know that you've got to have an arsenal of like other talking points and angles for you to test. Like it's all testing messaging, right? I mean, even earlier this week, I was I got a DM from someone who wanted to know if the event was for her. And because I'm so clear on like what she called it like a theme. So for me, the theme is, if you want to grow a big, dreamy business and achieve all of the like most out there goals you have, like becoming a paid speaker, starting a nonprofit, starting a podcast, becoming an author, like this is the space where you're going to leave knowing what your next action step towards doing those things are. And I'm able to basically say that in a very short 30-second soundbite, and it helps people understand whether or not that's the right space for them. Because I've also had people say, yeah, you know what, that's not quite like what I am working on right now. I had someone who was like, yeah, like I'm like pretty happy where I'm at right now. And I'm like, can't relate. Can't relate. We're always trying to like move towards the next thing. But that's okay. And that's why it's so important to have clarity around like what is the ultimate outcome that you want attendees to have? What is the experience you want people to have? Because that's what makes it easier to sell. Clear messaging tied to clear outcomes so people can really self-select in or out. So let's just recap. Okay, what are the different ways that I'm selling out this event that I think everybody should? I mean, the first thing is like start small. So obviously that's not helpful if you're in the planning stages, but actually let me just reiterate what I said to my client because this is really, really important. So I basically said to her, because in my world, there's no going back. Like I would never let myself or my clients cancel an event because of like low attendance. In my world, if you commit to a project, especially something that's front facing, like running an event, you are going to see that thing through to the end. So what I said to this client as she was having like some doubts around selling tickets, I was like, listen, you've committed to this project, you've made it a thing. So regardless if you have 20 people in that room or 200, you are going to make sure that this is the best experience possible. And that's really what I had to tell myself over a year ago when I had one ticket sell in a 48-hour period of launching tickets to a 60-person wait list. I had to say, well, if only one person comes to this event, I'm still going to make sure that it is the most exciting, incredible experience for that one person. So that's the first thing. The second thing too, that I had mentioned to this client was just contractually, like I would never guarantee a sponsor that I'm going to have X amount of seats filled. I actually did do that for my last event in October, but that contract was signed so close to the event date that I just knew I was going to reach the total. So that was fine. But the more that you grow your events and, the more risk you take on, I probably wouldn't sign that clause again just because things happen, the world changes. Weird things happen every single day. So yeah, I suggested to her, like, just make sure you're not contractually obligated for like an actual certain amount of people in that room. But obviously when it comes to sponsors, I always want to make sure that they get a great ROI and, they are in the right space where they can see benefit from that event. As someone myself who sponsors events, that's something that I hope each event that I partner with takes really seriously. So it's just about integrating like different touch points to make sure that sponsor does still have a great experience if you can't fill to the amount that you said you were going to. So yeah, but if you're like thinking about running an event and it's in the back of your mind, My biggest support to you is start small. Show yourself you can do it first. Do not come out the gate planning a 100-person event. Just don't do it. I don't care who tells you that they think you can do it. You've got to know that deep in your core. And I will be so honest. And this might hurt, any person who has come to me and said, I'm running this 100-person event and it's my first one, I've never seen any of them actually fill it to 100 when it's their very first event. And that's the truth. And some people are going to be really honest about that. But when I was at an event last year, I was speaking and I was sold a particular event saying that there was going to be 100 people in the room. And there was like 50, maybe even less than that. 30 probably by the day I was speaking. That's not a great experience at all. And I think we just need to be really, really honest with ourselves around like what we can really pull off, because that just like leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So that's just something to think about. So yeah, start small. If you're already in the planning process and you've been advertising the event with a certain number of people, I would take people on that journey with you. Like, I would be super vulnerable about the fact that, you're trying to sell tickets. This is the experience that you're going through. And this isn't to like make people feel bad for you, but it's to make sure that you're still like in integrity with the project and like being honest with your audience. And I think I've done this really, really well. Like, I have no qualms sharing the challenges of running an event and talking about it and being honest with, here's how many tickets are left. Here's the process. Here's what I've struggled with. Like, I have had no problem sharing those things. And I think that that's what's going to build even more trust with your audience, because at the end of the day, if you don't fill your event to 100 people, at least you've still stayed in integrity with the project and like haven't tried to turn it into something it's not, haven't promoted something that it clearly isn't going to be. So there's that as well. Second thing, don't rely on your speakers to sell tickets. You've got to move that room. So that's a pretty big one. Number 3, build up your local brand awareness. Get into your local rooms. Make sure you have like little promotional postcards that you can hand out with event details on them. I'm very, very generous with this with other people. So I have a client who's running a retreat in the fall. She'll be at my event in the after party. And I was like coaching her yesterday and I'm like, please make sure you bring postcards to my event. You can hand them out to people. I have no qualms about you promoting your event to the people in this room, because I do think that it's this similar audience. And, I don't believe that one person's, I don't think that her doing that impacts me and my success in any way. So get into local events, build up that local brand awareness. And yeah, the last one would be multiple storylines, multiple angles, really know the messaging, the clarity, all of that behind the event. So you can get really good at talking to people and helping them either self-select in or out. So that's it. Thank you for bearing with me. I had some internet issues. So I hope that this episode doesn't come out too choppy, but please rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Like I said, there are a few tickets remaining for Big Brand Energy Live on June 11th in Surrey, BC, Canada. If you are listening to this podcast and you are local and you haven't got your ticket yet, I want you to ask yourself why. What fear do you have? Fear around making the investment in that ticket? Fear that you're going to come to the event and not know anybody? Because at this point, if you're listening to this podcast consistently, because I know there are women who listen to a bunch of these episodes who do live locally, who I haven't seen on that guest list yet, what's the hang up? Because at this point, the hang up is somewhere in fear. There's some sort of hesitation or resistance from you putting yourself in a physical space that can expand you. And I actually talk about this in my keynote. we do a lot of like consumption of information and inspiration. Okay. So like, you're listening to this podcast, you'll probably read my book, you look at my content. But when it comes to action, physically moving like the person that we want to become, that's when we hesitate. So if that's you, I want you to ask yourself why. Because I think if you can challenge that resistance and move anyways, this room will freaking change your life. So head to the show notes, use code FAMEREADY to save some money off your ticket. And yeah, it really is going to be the day that changes everything for me and for the women in this space. So I cannot wait to see you there. If you're coming and you listen to this episode, send me a DM so I can celebrate with you. And I'll see you all next week. Okay. Toodles.